In newly released game Mina the Hollower, there are 28 bosses to fight, some optional, some required, but I want to rank them all. In my first playthrough, I used the Night Star Whip, while in my second playthrough, I used the Whisper and Vesper daggers. You can see my full playthrough of the game over on stream. I'm Billy S, and let's jump in with the lowest ranking Mina boss. At number 28, we have the Hulk Trooper, who is fought right before you reach Osix for the first time. He is a big brute, and becomes a regular enemy later on, which doesn't really bode well for his survivability. He swings, hits hard, but as long as you know how to burrow away from his attacks and time your hits carefully, he's barely even a footnote in the larger game. I actually almost forgot he was a boss, but he does have that health bar down there to prove it. It doesn't help that as far as the tutorial goes, he's also sandwiched between two far better boss fights as a result, and that lands him at the bottom of the list. At number 27, we have Madhouse, a surprise boss fought right before you reach Septemberg. The house comes to life and tries to crush you with its wicked feet and its horrifying visage. It can swing both its feet to kick you, and it can fly into the air and attempt to crush you. At low health, the Madhouse also throws out a series of bombs you need to avoid. It's a very simple moveset, with the boss's design doing a lot of the heavy lifting. My problem with this fight though is the hitbox. The house is so big, and sometimes you'll be in a corner, you'll need to hollow underneath and around the house to avoid damage, but even when you're above the house in the arena, you can still get clipped by a hitbox in locations where you really shouldn't be. I didn't like taking damage that didn't feel deserved, and that immediately knocks this down to the bottom of the list. At number 26, we have Dugan, a boss fight that is more of an endurance test than it is an actual battle. Two kids are searching for a monster, and they corner this innocent-looking bunny and try to hunt it down with their primitive techniques, using a slingshot to fire rocks in various arcs around the room, using a net to try and catch the bunny beneath it, firing blue orbs that bounce around in a straight line, and both the boss and the kids do contact damage to Mina if you get hit. You have to fight this boss twice to get the reward, but because the kids are the ones doing most of the damage, you really have to just stay out of the way and take pot shots. It's a cute idea, but that's all it really is, cute. Especially when you have to do it twice and the encounter is the same both times. At number 25, we have Midden, an optional boss in the Queensbury Crypt Zone. He understandably aggroes onto you when you call him out on his stench, and thus the optional encounter begins. Though it is worth noting to even enter his boss room, you have to sacrifice 2 of your plasma vials, and this can make the fight extremely tough if, as the game hints, you come to Queensbury Crypt as your first dungeon when you have the least upgrades available. But after 2 playthroughs, Midden just doesn't leave much impression for me. He'll either attempt to jump and punch you, or he'll send his flies to do his bidding. These flies become more plentiful as the battle progresses, so having a good sub-weapon that can crowd control can really turn the tides. He'll sometimes launch a series of them around the room that explode, which you do have to avoid, and this becomes more frequent in the back half of the fight, but with enough perseverance he goes down. I just didn't find Midden terribly memorable, and while the fight was cute enough, it felt a tad hectic for my tastes. At number 24, we have the Nether Kraken, the opening boss of the game. Fought on the ship as you sail towards Tenebrous Isle, this is one of those super hard fights you're forced to lose, except if you do win, you get a nice trinket as a reward. The Nether Kraken is very simple in its attacks. It will attempt to slam you with its 2 tentacles, sometimes doing quick slams, sometimes leaving the tentacle stationary so you can attack it. If the tentacle begins to shake after being slammed down, it means it's going to move and you have to dive beneath it. If both of its tentacles shake, same issue, but now you've got to dodge 2 of them. The Nether Kraken does a lot of damage, but you can do the same in return before the fight even starts. It's possible to harm the boss during the cutscene as it grabs and launches people from the boat before you fight. Because of the nature of this boss and how it's a slight annoyance to refight with you needing to restart your save every time though, I can't rank it any higher. Though the twist that the Nether Kraken is actually just the final boss flipped around was pretty damn cool to discover when we hit it later in the game. I completely forgot that the first letter we received was from the Marshal of Osix, which was Thorn before he left his post. I remembered thinking it was from Lionel. Fascinating lore stuff. At number 23, we have Maxie, who can be fought on the east exit of Osix. I encountered her after beating Queensbury Crypt, but I wouldn't be surprised if she triggered from simply restoring your first generator. Maxie doesn't really land for me as a fight though, which is a real shame because this character was built as a potential rival for Mina, only to appear for this single fight and then vanish for the rest of the game. A master of the whip, Maxie has a massive range and it can be extremely difficult to avoid her strikes, especially when she launches the whip and then starts walking around with it, forcing you to play a deadly game of jump rope. She also has throwable hand axes that function the same as your sub-weapon, and she can throw a series of orbs to try and trip you up. Why I admittedly dislike Maxie is her movement. She hops around the battlefield and never gives you a moment to breathe. All three of your starting weapons are good against stationary enemies, but not so much against someone who moves from place to place like Maxie. Chasing her down only for her to dodge away and hit me with her attacks just got a bit frustrating even on my second playthrough. I can't say my thoughts have changed. At number 22, we have Mirren, an optional encounter found in a cave of Coltrane Peak. A ghost who sits in a chair. If you attack her, you'll trigger dialogue that causes her to become angered. She fights in a similar manner to the ghost enemies you find throughout the peak, floating around the room while summoning green flames that will circle and home in on Mina. She also has the ability to clone herself, using them initially as homing attacks, but then using them as room-wide AoEs you can hollow underneath. It's a nice step up from our previous entries, and more so lands this low on the list due to a combination of her design, which I don't really care for, and the unceremonious nature of her encounter. She feels a little half-baked in that sense compared to the rest of the optional bosses who have more flourishes to them. It also doesn't help that she's one of 4 bosses fought in Coltrane Peak, the only of which isn't mandatory, meaning you're more likely to forget about her in the long run. At number 21, we have the Frozen Horror fought in the Ice Cavern of Coltrane Peak. This is a simple boss encounter where you have to attack the Frozen Horror encased in the ice to deal damage. However, with every attack, the boss slides along the ice with ever-increasing physics that you have to be aware of. The sides of the arena are coated in ice blocks, so as you knock the boss into them, the arena begins to open up, giving you more space to dodge. Having the boots that allow you to walk normally on icy surfaces is a must in this case. The horror can also shoot fireballs that you need to avoid, and towards the end of the battle, the arena begins to shrink, forcing you into closer proximity with the boss while he's moving faster and faster as his health lowers. I do like the evil touch though that once the boss's health depletes and the ice shatters, he has a scripted fireball arc that you need to avoid that I imagine caught a few people off guard. I'm used to that stuff in JRPGs, with the behemoths in Final Fantasy casting Meteor when they die, but seeing the boss attacks as it dies trick in a Zelda-like was one for the books. At number 20, we have Thalassion, who can only be fought after collecting all 15 fish in the game. He ate the NPC who gave you your rod, and now you're going to rescue him. The weak spot is the flashing yellow orb on its back, and you have to avoid a series of charge attacks and wave attacks while timing your moment to strike. You can use the fishing rod to zoom towards the fish for good damage, or you can fight the old-fashioned way by waiting for openings to attack with your weapon. I like the way the fish circles the arena, and how you don't have a ton of standing space, so you have to be more careful with how you move around. And the boss has a decent health pool that keeps him alive for a long time. I fought him at max level, and he still felt a tad tanky, which makes sense given you can't fight him without visiting every other biome in the map. A good reward for a decently fun questline in the game that started so horrifyingly. At number 19, we have Armand, the blacksmith's brother who you fight in their basement. He's sick of his hermano up top taking the credit for his work, and you've got to face Armand in battle to impress him. His difficulty depends on when you fight him, as you can tackle him the moment you buy your second upgrade from the blacksmith. He stomps the ground to create rocks that burst into different formations, and he dashes around the arena with his many feet like a madman. He's got extremely high defense and a very large health bar, but he has one weakness. If you create lava streams using the blocks at the top of the arena and then he steps in them, his defenses will lower, allowing you to deal regular damage. It's a fun fight, and depending on how early you face him, you could be in for a real struggle. I love it. At number 18, we have the Luminarchs found within the Astral Orrery. From this point on, I'm really high on all these bosses for one reason or another. They all do something right, and in the case of the Luminarchs, they bring a unique flavour to the table. Instead of depleting a regular health bar, the goal of this battle is to keep the waves of Luminarchs away from the left side of the screen. The cultists that are damageable will light up in varying colours, and it's up to you to pick and choose who you prioritise while avoiding their attacks. If they glow blue, they'll fire a laser. If they glow purple, they'll fire black holes you can fall into. If they glow rainbow, they'll gain a burst of speed and you have to cut them off quickly. And if they glow yellow, they'll explode and send their whole group backwards. My first run on stream with the Nightstar was a struggle, because I wasn't doing damage quick enough to send the Luminarchs back. I managed it, but it felt like a real war of attrition, whereas this recorded footage of me using Whisper and Vesper had me cutting through them like they were paper plates. Never thought I'd enjoy a Deacons of the Deep style boss in 2D, Souls fans will get that reference, but Yacht Club Games, you pulled it off. At number 17, we have Mutated Thorn. Due to Lionel's actions at the last generator, Thorn is mutated into a horrifying bat creature, and when you arrive in the central square of Ossix, you have to fight him after he destroys the main fountain. Thorn's beast form jumps around summoning whirlwinds just like in his regular incarnation, but instead of his trademark lance, his tongue now acts as a spear, except with a xenomorph-style quality as it twists and turns in an attempt to stab you. The fight doesn't last terribly long, nor is Thorn's moveset that extreme. It's just a lot of projectiles flying around in chaotic madness, which fits the narrative of the moment. He's there to scare you, to surprise you, but not to completely challenge you. It also makes his narrative turn in the final boss more impactful after seeing him fight back against the instincts within. At number 16, we have Wonder Willis, found in the Ossix Music Hall. The only way to access this boss is to save the frog at the end of Nox's bio and deliver him to his band in the swamp. Do this, pay a small fee, and then get into the music hall by burrowing beneath someone as they enter to pass the bouncer, and the fight will begin. Willis is a performer, he wants his big break, but his big break involves a deadly dance. You have to knock him over, then hollow beneath him, pick him up, and yeet him into the audience to deal damage, which is as ridiculous as it sounds. He dances around the stage wielding a large swordfish as his weapon, though most of the time he's focusing on the jig. You'll have to dodge music notes flying from across the screen, deadly lunges, and even avoid tomatoes thrown by patrons who don't quite like you. It's an odd fight, and I still don't quite understand why he forced us into the battle. The dialogue is a bit weird on that front, but it leaves a strong impression, and I totally see Willis landing in most people's top 10 once they discover him. For me, I prefer traditional health bars over stunning to deal chunks of damage, but I really respect the Willis hustle. At number 15, we have the Nox's Beast, the first dungeon boss to appear on the list. This crocodilian creature stalks you throughout the dungeon, appearing in rooms with high water flow to try and chomp you from below. And once in his fight, you see the creature in all of his glory. When above the water, the design reminds me a little bit of Guzzlord from Pokemon if he was shaped like a genie bottle, while when he's underwater, he takes on the form of a dangerous croc. And it's the underwater phase that is the most deadly. As he swims through the arena, he destroys the land beneath the places he passes, lowering the amount of safe spots you can platform to. Not to mention, he moves faster and faster the lower health he has. Above water, he tries to flatten you by hopping around, he can shoot orbs that coat the arena, and later they become charged with fire that are more deadly to avoid, and he can suck you in with his stomach mouth if you're not careful. I also love that he can throw fire that expands across the arena, similar to the fish enemies you fought in the dungeon. It's all about positioning and careful platforming for the beast, but he ended up being one of the easier major fights in the game, and I was a little surprised he didn't end up having a second phase or something. At number 14, we have Fergus the Faithful, found midway through the Radiant Manor. The loyal butler of Lionel, he chugs enough plasma to mutate himself into a four-headed Cerberus, who also acts as a wonderful homage to Zelda's Manhandler boss. His four heads each try to attack Mina, either by firing furballs at her that you can hit back, or by launching themselves with their stretchy necks to try and bite her. The body can also swipe at you with its claws, and the challenge of the fight becomes managing the chaos and getting those hits in where you can. Other dirt orbs also bounce around the room as you slowly take care of each head, while the boss's moveset gets faster and faster as a result. Once all four heads are down, the boss is finished. I definitely found this fight tough with the Nightstar with its slow directional attacks, whereas Whisper and Vesper allowed me to carve Fergus up like a Halloween pumpkin. He couldn't stand a chance as I was able to tank his damage and deal enough quick hits to heal myself right back to full. As a fan of the inspiration behind this boss fight, I was just happy again to see that Manhandler representation in 2026. At number 13, we have Radiant Lionel, the final boss of the game. I just knew we had to have at least one boss fight take place during the ascent up one of the generators, and Radiant Lynel ends the game in brutally difficult fashion. If you haven't been upgrading your defenses, his claw swipes hit like a truck. He can summon various different coloured sources of energy, which is prominent throughout the fight, and each one has their own different attack pattern. Red fires in a straight line, yellow follows the player, so on and so forth. The biggest gag though is how the first half of the fight sees the return of the Nether Kraken, with Lionel's bottom half actually being the sprite for the Kraken with a palette swap. The reveal that he destroyed your boat at the start of the game was wild to discover in real time. Once you reach the top of the tower, the fight gets a little less hectic. Lynel focuses entirely either on using his energy attacks, his claw swipes, or a dive across the screen to switch sides. I still think his claws are a little obnoxious, not giving you much time to get hits in before the next one comes out, but I got used to the pace by the time I was able to beat him on stream. And then Thorn shows up, mutated but in control, and helps to protect Mina from Lionel's strongest attacks. It's the baby Metroid from Super Metroid all over again, except this one has a happier ending revealed in the post-credits scene. I love the detail that you can take damage from Thorn though. He's still a monster, and you have to keep getting your licks in while these two battle for supremacy, culminating in the most satisfying drill attack that defeats Lynel for good. I won't pretend it's my favourite fight though, because the coloured energy attacks are just so Mega Man Dr. Wily coded, and those were always my least favourite boss types from those games. But I will say, that is a very satisfying conclusion to this game, and the almost Kefka-esque final boss sprite is gorgeous to look at. At number 12, we have the Duchess, the boss of the Queensborough Crypt. Immediately, I love the introduction, with her hand grasping the head you were carrying before her whole body emerges. She's not a complex boss in terms of moveset, but her arena helps to make her feel like a standout. She swings her mace around attempting to uppercut you or smash you, but the hitbox is forgiving and it's easy to hollow beneath her. The challenge are the various pressure plates that appear on the floor, which correspond to arrow traps on the wall. You have to watch where you and the boss are stepping so you don't get sniped from behind, and it's a level of arena awareness I really appreciated. Then it turns out she gets a phase 2, where the body grows a series of tentacles and the head begins bouncing around the boss room like a misguided pet. The most dangerous attack is when the boss forces her tentacles in the ground, causing them to sprout near Mina and attack. It's dangerous because you're forced to keep moving, only getting a single hit in per pass while waiting for other opportunities to deal damage. Combine this with the boss leaping around, shifting the various pressure plates, and the harassment of the head, and you'll have a dungeon boss who really makes you work for your victory. Even better when she's the first dungeon boss you'll face if you're taking the basic route through the game. A real trial by fire moment, and a reminder that Mina the Hollower will not be holding your hand, although you can just use the easy mode features and that is completely fine and a totally normal way to play. You do miss out on achievements, but if achievements are your make or break, I think that's kind of sad. At number 11, we have the Congealed, the only 3-phase boss fight in Mina the Hollower, for to top the Astral Orrery. Discovering the experiments into Spark going on in the Orrery was a rather horrifying experience all on its own, but realizing that the Congealed is made up of the remains of various researchers who didn't even realize they had congealed is wild. The first phase is all about learning the moveset. The boss has some telegraphed slash attacks, a charge attack, and a jump attack. At certain points, pieces of the boss will become regular enemies that you need to destroy, and after a jump attack, the boss will launch a series of electric lines that you need to jump over in alternating patterns. In Phase 2, the boss's slash attacks gain an energy beam effect, and midway into the health bar, the boss explodes into little enemies before reforming into 2 clones. They share a health bar, thank god, but this is where I can see the challenge amplify. You think you're done after this, but then Phase 3 sees the skull of the Congealed flying around the room while shooting fireballs. You have to use the movement platforms to catch up and ultimately defeat the boss. Luckily, this phase has a shorter health pool than the first 2, but the challenge is there regardless. I'm glad the Orrery really said it's time to challenge you with its main fight, even if I felt the melee moveset was a tad bit bland. I wanted to see the fight incorporate more of those Astral Orrery gimmicks we'd experienced throughout the level. But god, comparing this boss and most of the bosses in this game to the ones from the early Zeldas, we have come such a long way. If this is your favourite fight from the game, besties, I understand. And you know what else I understand? Parrying that subscribe button. It helps the channel out. We're really trying to get to 50,000 subscribers by the end of 2026, and literally every subscription genuinely helps. At number 10, we have Major Minor, fought in the Sand Falls before Bone Beach. Leader of the Dwarven Miners, they trap you in a pit and force you to throw down against him, and it somehow ended up being one of my most memorable fights. His main ability is his Pickaxe Slam, which sends yellow cracks across the ground that erupt with his damaging energy. This forces you to play carefully, sticking to the safe spots in the arena since you can't hollow through them. The boss can also throw rocks at you in various patterns, and midway into the fight, he begins spinning around the arena like a Beyblade, launching pickaxes across the room that you have to dodge. All of this is a lot to handle, but then you add that smaller miners can fall into the arena, and if he grabs them, he'll eat them to heal health. You have a battle that really tests you. You can pick up those miners yourself and throw them at the boss to remove them from the board so he doesn't heal, but that won't change his various AoEs that you need to be careful of. I don't know, I think for a mid-level boss, he had a lot of focus, and I really like the aesthetic of his attacks. The yellow crack attack just looks so pleasing to the eye, very deserving of a top 10 finish for me. At number 9, we have Mind, the dungeon boss of Bone Beach. This poor creature that has been mined to death still has one thing, its brain, and we're the ones who finally put it out of its misery. This is the most chaotic fight on the roster. There is so much to keep track of, from the eyes on the walls that can target you with attacks, the ever-changing arena thanks to bottomless pits, bone spikes, and the side walls that push outwards at random intervals, the circular ring attacks, lasers are being fired from the boss left and right, it can leave trails of acid once it unchains itself. There is so much going on that the visual clutter is overwhelming. You have to attack the blue eyes on the brain, and once one remains, the boss begins bouncing and sliding around the room while switching the location of the weak spot. But for all of the visual clutter, I actually think Mind has a lot of thought put behind it. It reminds me of Mothula from A Link to the Past, if that fight was actually good, where the arena itself is very much the danger as opposed to the brain. Normally I'd have a fight like this a bit lower as it's not my cup of tea, but I really wanted to highlight that they did the chaotic concept really well, so it lands at number 9. At number 8, we have Evra the Undying, the hidden boss in a crypt in Radiant Manor's Eastern Garden. Getting across the gap to even reach Evra's part of the garden requires knowledge of your trinkets and sub-weapons, and as a reward, you face off against the hardest hitting fight in the game. Evra is the girl, and the creature she rides is her steed. Even with a fully leveled character, every hit is a big portion of your health, and this is a fight where as it progresses, there are more and more ways to take damage introduced. The boss's main attack is either a horizontal or vertical punch. The boss can't move in diagonals while slamming, which helps with dodging. Otherwise, for the first half, the boss focuses on summoning skeletons to chase you down. It can summon them in groups of 3, shoot 5 of them outwards in an arc that try to land atop you, and most dangerously, fire a series of skeletons in a cone with a shotgun-style spread. The skeletons can be killed by the boss's charge attacks, so it becomes a fight about crowd control and consistent damage. Midway, Evra begins summoning a blue orb that circles the room and does massive health, and the boss gains the power to coat themselves with a circle of skeletons, prolonging the fight. You just gotta go in, go hard. The longer the fight lasts, the rougher it is for you. But succeeding feels inherently rewarding because the fight is meant to be so difficult. I'm really happy I took her down. At number 7, we have the Mock Moon found in Nox's bio. Down a side path that leads to the area's mirror, the Mock Moon is a fight that really landed for me. It actually follows you up the previous screen, reflecting off of the water, but you assume it's the real moon because the arena is called Moonlit Path. Then it emerges from the water with an angry face and begins circling you menacingly as the fight begins. The boss manipulates the water in the arena to create explosions that try to damage you. These explosions form beneath the boss, following them in a trail. You have to be careful when avoiding these attacks whilst also dodging the boss's slams and dive attacks, where it'll head into the water and then slide towards you to deal damage. Fighting this boss when you first arrive in the bio is brutal because the Mock Moon is very strong, and you have a tricky screen to clear to even reach the arena. Then the boss starts using arena-wide attacks where you have to find the safe spots to avoid the blasts, which is made harder when the boss coats the area in darkness, and the only way to find the safe spots is to stick close to the boss or look for dark patches during the room-wide AoEs. Sure, I finished this boss off pretty quickly once it reached the final phase, but don't get it twisted. The Mock Moon is a tough cookie. From the surprise reveal of the boss itself to the genuinely fun arena attacks, I found myself heavily vibing with this guy. Girl? I'm not really sure. At number 6, we have Dark Deluxie, found at the end of Septemberg. To start the fight, you have to lead this moth through a dark cave to the Septemberg generator, and once Deluxie touches the light, they become Dark Deluxie. The gimmick of this fight, and the main reason it lands so high on this list, is that it's the only fight that explicitly ignores your ability to burrow. Hollowing is cancelled out by the metallic floors, meaning you have to use traditional movement to avoid Deluxe's various projectiles. There are these purple pollen orbs that she fires in various arcs to begin, but she can also shoot them in a moving barrage you have to jump over, she can summon them while flying through the arena at top speeds, she can blast them around her in a circular pattern before approaching you with her own circular movement, and midway through the fight, Dark Deluxe brings in the area gimmick of wind that pushes you in a direction, except it also pushes her projectiles. So now you're having to push against the wind, avoid the projectiles slowly moving towards you, and avoid the boss's already tough movement patterns. Luckily, she's not the strongest in terms of HP, and to even face her, you are required to have cleared at least 2 of the 6 main dungeons. So as the only boss that really plays with being unable to hollow at all during the fight, I think they designed her challenge really well, and it made the fight stand out tremendously. Just missing out on my top 5. At number 5, we have the Carving Man, the main boss of Septemberg. Though the fight doesn't truly begin until the end of the dungeon, it's worth noting that the Carving Man tries to chase you throughout your adventure. You can even save a series of kids in optional rooms in the dungeon, and if you beat the boss without talking to those kids, they die. Bit grim. The actual fight consists of 2 sections. The first is a pursuit sequence across a horizontal path with precision jumps, the blowing of the wind trying to stop you, and the boss himself attempting to charge you. This is required on every attempt, so I kind of consider it part of the fight. But once you're in his arena, his true muscular form is revealed. The boss dashes and stabs with his pumpkin arms, also able to launch them as homing projectiles. He summons concrete from the ceiling to crush you and make the arena more cluttered, and midway through the fight he becomes a lightning rod, attracting lightning to create dazzling AoEs that you have to dive and jump over. Mina also gets targeted by the lightning herself, with the only way to stop her getting struck being to stick near the boss as he attracts the attack off of her. It's a really neat gimmick, and while the boss's overall moveset doesn't quite reach the complexity of some of the fights on this list, I think the presentation, the design, and the journey you go through with the Carving Man across the whole dungeon really elevates this encounter. At number 4, we have Thorn, fought outside Radiant Manor at the end of the tutorial. How fitting that Mina's main rival is one of the best fights in the game and it happens at the very beginning of your journey. Thorn attacks you as you leave the Radiant Manor, acting as the big challenge you need to overcome to prove you can handle the rest of the game. His moveset is surprisingly vast for such an early fight, but that's what makes him memorable. He uses a lance, attacking you with 3 hit swipe combos, jumping stab attacks, and dashes, the latter of which leaves trails on the ground that explode shortly after. He also can whip up whirlwinds with his weapon, either shooting them forwards towards Mina or around him in a protective circle after he slams down from the sky. His movement is also fast, and because most players won't have full control over their weapon of choice just yet, it can be hard to land those critical hits. And yet, the punish windows are there for those that look for them. Thorn will almost certainly beat new players a few times, hammering home that he is a dangerous character you need to keep in mind throughout your journey, and it worked for me, as he's probably my favourite character in the game. At number 3, we have Locomotress Agnes, the main boss of Coltrane Peak. Rather fitting that a peak boss is fought on the mountain. Agnes is a ghost that runs a ghostly train around the summit of the peak, and it's up to you to put a stop to it. She dives underground attempting to hit you. She can summon giant wheels that roll along the arena, which you can burrow around with careful positioning. She throws wrenches that will eventually return to sender, and midway into the fight she begins summoning various items to try and hit you with them. These items can be broken for healing items and other power-ups though, making them quite useful. All while the train is moving and you're having to run along the endless train cars to keep up with the boss. The biggest challenge is simply finding those moments to hit her. She's quick and doesn't leave a ton of openings, which is in stark contrast to the last third of the fight where she summons all of the train parts to become this giant mechanical monster, with the ability to split open the train roof and drop you into oblivion. You've got to time your jumps so you don't fall, attacking her eyes while avoiding items that she summons. This was tricky on my first playthrough, but on my second I really clicked with the movement and managed to overcome her on my very first attempt. Locomotress Agnes had so much thought put into her presentation and her moveset, it really hits the train motif perfectly, and of the 6 generator bosses, she is just easily the best one. So who beat her? At number 2, we have the rematch against Thorn on Coltrane Peak, which lands a tad bit higher than his original fight on the list. He starts off with mostly the same moveset as his first encounter, except everything is now sped up. Attacks come out quicker, he spends more time flying in the air to avoid you, he has a new homing attack with 4 projectiles he can summon while flying, and midway through the fight he uses the power of echolocation to figure out exactly where Mina is for devastating lunges. It's an insanely cool attack, and also true to life, bats do use echolocation. The biggest challenge though comes from the arena, which slowly begins to crumble until you're left in a small square to avoid his attacks and come out on top. It's a more challenging variant of his battle, but one you're more likely to succeed at because it comes much further in the game. I don't mind that though. I may find this battle easier in the long run, but I see the challenges they baked into it, and I think both encounters with Thorn represent some of the best that Mina the Hollower has to offer. Not much else to say that I didn't say a few entries back, so why don't we just move on to the best fight in the game? At number 1, we have Baron Lionel, for to top the Radiant Manor. And the award for the world's most obvious villain goes to this fucking lion. But what I love about his character is that not only is he a propaganda machine who can turn the entire populace against Mina, but he fully leans into believing his own delusions. To the very end, he convinces himself that Mina is truly in the wrong, and that is a layer of depth I didn't expect to see. His fight plays around with the power of Spark, as he can summon electricity with many of his attacks, but with a gimmick that reminded me of the blue-orange gimmick from Asgore in Undertale. At certain points he'll prepare this combo, and he telegraphs the attack with these red and blue glints right before he strikes. A blue glint means that he'll perform an electric AoE around him that flips the tiles of the arena to become non-hollowable. A red glint means he'll perform a punch that dashes him forwards to reach Mina. Watching the coloured glints, you can predict his combo and position yourself accordingly. He can also grab and yeet Mina if he gets too close, and midway through the fight he gets onto all fours, embracing the lion within him and charging around the arena. It's his bite attack in this form though you need to avoid, as if he grabs you in his jaws, he'll heal himself, leaving you down resources and him up in HP. It's a solid punishment for failing to avoid a telegraphed attack and shows how ferocious the Baron can actually be. Behind that facade is a wild animal. This really feels like a final battle, and I actually wish it had another phase before we shifted into the Radiant Lionel encounter because I was having so much fun with this moveset. As it stands though, Baron Lionel, you are my favourite boss in Mina the Hollower and one of the most interesting villains I've seen in a while. Thanks for watching guys, adios.